As I gaze into the unknown, outer space, in the Arcanum, guys, I just can't help but wonder how little we really know about both Wizard101 and Pirate101, despite the games being out for, well, one of them being over a decade old, and the other, definitely, almost a decade, right? I think this is going to be Pirate101's, 8th year or something of being out. I don't know, I can't help but wonder and contemplate the lore of both these games and how amazing they how amazing they are in their own right, guys. It's just incredible, honestly, what these games have done with both of their lore, so to speak. It's very awesome. They both tell an incredible story and put you on an incredible adventure, guys. But today, we are going to be comparing and contrasting both of these lores, guys, because they both, while similar in their own right, are also very different because they encompass two different themes of game. And as similar as these games are, the lore is very different and is designed differently in each game, and I'll get into that, guys. But anyways, this might be a little bit of a longer video. I'm not really sure how long it's going to be. Probably little cuts, very little cuts, but hopefully you guys do come to enjoy it. So anyways, I'm going to get into the lore right now. I won't be talking about the specifics of the lore and the content in it, maybe a tiny bit, but I'm really just going to you know, contemplate the lore, and I'm going to explain what each game did well with their own lore, and which game did bad. So yeah, if you didn't know already by the title, we're comparing and contrasting lore of Wizard101 and Pirate101, guys. Yeah, anyways, let's get into some of the things that Pirate101 did right, guys. And I don't know, I think this is just the proper place, though, even though we are going to be talking about Pirate101 and Wizard101 in this video. The Arcanum seemed like a good place, guys. So, anyways, one point that I'd like to bring up right away for Pirate101. So yeah, let's talk about it. So Pirate101 storyline, hello, person. So Pirate101 storyline, one thing that it has going for it is it's a lot more grounded, guys. The storyline in Pirate is overall just a smaller game than Wizard101. I think the stakes are smaller too. Overall, yes, just a smaller game. There's just fewer worlds. I mean, obviously it hasn't been out as long as Wizard101 has. Both of these games, you know, like I said, they have their own advantages and disadvantages. Pirate101 is a smaller game, guys. And overall, I think there's many aspects of Pirate101 that actually make its lore feel a lot more grounded than Wizard101, guys. Basically, having a grounded storyline, like Pirate101 does, actually allows for better storytelling. Overall, it makes you feel a bit more connected to the characters and how the story is explained. Yeah, it makes it just a lot more interesting, and I feel like you're just a little bit more enveloped, I guess, in the lore. And I think that's the kind of vibe that Pirate101 gives for me. I think it's just the lore itself is very grounded with how small the game is and everything. Everything all feels intertwined and connected one way or another. Whereas in Wizard101, I think it's a bit more distant. You're a little bit more distant from where you are. There's obviously a lot more worlds to explore, and I feel like you can just get caught up in all that. In Pirate101, it doesn't really have that effect. Once again, it could just be because there's less worlds. I'm not really sure, but I think one of the things that grounds the story a lot in Pirate101 is your whole ensemble of a crew, guys. The crew aspect of Pirate101 is amazing, and exactly why it's amazing, basically, you know, you've got these companions, right, that talk to you, they interact with you, and overall, they just make the game pretty much feel a lot more real, I guess you could say. It definitely keeps you interested and moving throughout the game. Obviously, yes, you interact with these companions, you do quests for them, you promote them, you know, you got to train them. You know, companions and your crew overall is an intricate part of the game and the storyline, and I think that's what's so genius about it, is that it just affects both ends of the spectrum. Obviously, you gotta train your crew, you know, to move on with the story. It's gonna help you in battle and everything, and I think that's also what keeps the storyline a lot more grounded, and you feel a lot more connected to more characters, and that's what I love about Pirates lore. I think that's very cool. Another thing about Pirates lore, I'm going into Pirate first if you can't tell. Yeah, so the crew is just a really interesting dynamic. It really fleshes out the story, I think. And I think one of the things that Wizard101 suffers from in its lore is I feel that it can get a bit robotic at times, because it's literally just your character running around, you know, and you're doing these quests, right? But really, aside from like a few side characters helping you out once in a while, I mean, the game's kind of lonely. Like, obviously, basically, this is mainly for solos. I guess if you're with friends, obviously it is less lonely. But I think in Pirate101, it just feels a lot more fleshed out as you're walking because you've got your crew, you know, who's commentating on the things that you say and the things that other people say. Obviously, very interesting dynamic. Wizard101 doesn't have that, really. Sometimes, you know, you can get the little character on the side to go with you and everything, and geez, the sounds coming from here are really cool. Sorry, I think the Arcanum is just a really cool place to do this video. So yeah, in Wizard101, the problem is you don't really have that interesting dynamic. You know, I feel like your crew kind of keeps you going at some points, and I think that's just a really important part of fleshing out the story. Obviously, is just having characters tag along with you. Obviously, in Wiz, you have some characters like that, but in Pirate101, they just do a better job of being more consistent with that kind of stuff. So, anyways, moving on here, Pirate101, yeah, like I said, I'm gonna go through all the Pirate101 stuff first. So, I don't know, you can maybe skip a little bit if you want to get to the Wiz stuff, but yeah. Pirate101, I want to give my opinion on its world building. So, basically, all these things about Pirate101, they're kind of intertwined. How small the game is, and really, it really makes you feel a little bit more invested, I believe, in the worlds with your crew and everything, and how you guys all interact. It's much more invested, which allows for greater world building. You know, and greater world building, obviously, it just makes you care about the characters and what you're doing, and, like, obviously your crew, like, a lot more, you know? And care about the world itself more, obviously, which, you know, obviously, like, I guess, I don't know the right word, but, like, I guess it entertains you, like, a bit more and keeps you invested in the game. So I think Pirate101 does a really good job of that. I think it has great world building. I think, yeah, the worlds are really nicely, neatly connected. Obviously, it's like, oh, your companion's from another world, and we have to go to that world because your companion said so. You know, I think that's just really, really nice of how it all connects with your crew and everything. Once again, I think the crew is just a really, really interesting dynamic. And that's one of the main things Pirate101 does really, really well. So, okay. Sorry. So, in Wizard101, however, I feel like you feel a bit more distant. I think there's just not as great of a world building aspect to it. Obviously, I think some worlds did a really good job of world building, such as Wizard City. But the problem with this, the problem that Wizard101 has is you don't really know a lot about yourself. You know, like in Pirate101, it's explored that, like, your whole character arc, like, it's kind of you driving the story. And obviously, not to say that you're not driving the story in Wizard101. Of course you are. You're running around doing the things, making the shit happen. But in Pirate101, the whole storyline is, like, centered around your, you know, your parents and, like, following in their footsteps to go to El Dorado, of course. Like, that's just really cool. And in Wizard101, you don't really know a lot about yourself, which can affect the world building quite a bit, because it's like, oh, like, for example, like in Jonatown, the Frog Father gives you your parents' ship back, you know, and it's like, Merle Ambrose isn't there to, like, give you your parents' wand or whatever, because we don't know who our parents are, you know, we don't really know where we came from. But yeah, so I think Pirate101, I think it has a little bit more of an origin story. This can obviously be said for the tutorial as well, when you were on board Deacon's ship. Yeah, overall, just better world building in Pirate101 adds for really good storytelling aspects to that. So, that's really good. Now, let's get into some of the bad here. Pirate101's storyline, as you all know, towards the end, guys, gosh, this isn't good. Pirate101's storyline was rushed. I'm sure this is common knowledge to everyone, unless you haven't played the game for like 5 years and you've been living under a rock. Pirate101's storyline was rushed towards the end, guys. Basically what they did, they shot out Valencia Part 2, like, what, 3 years after Aquila, or 2 years after Aquila? I'm not really sure when Aquila was released, but I think it was around that time. But yeah, so they put out Valencia Part 2, guys, and then you defeated Kane, and then you got the ending where your parents said, oh no, don't go to El Dorado, it's too dangerous. Yeah, so the big problem with this, obviously, they got lazy, right? They needed to tie up some loose ends, they did it in the dumbest way possible by saying, oh, it was too dangerous, you can't go there, you can never finish the game truly. And that really sucks, guys, and that's a problem because that makes the whole story really, really inconsistent. Because, you know, what you were trying to do the entire game, collect the map pieces for El Dorado and eventually go there, that was the ultimate goal, guys. That was the goal of Pirate101. And they just said, I don't even know, they rejected it. You know, you don't get to do that anymore. The final goal that you were preparing for, that was the game that was the direction the game was heading, guys, and you didn't get to do that. It all overall just feels really unsatisfying. And obviously the Kane fight came way too early, and overall there was just a lot of problems with it. But yeah, that's what sucked. That's where Pirate101's story failed, guys. You never really reached your end goal. I mean, you defeated Kane, but like the whole point of defeating Kane was that so he wouldn't stop you from going to El Dorado, or he wouldn't get there first or whatever and become, you know, the most powerful being in the spiral. Even though he was already like kind of the most powerful being, I don't really know. But yeah, that's what sucks with Pirate101. You never really got your end goal. You never really got the satisfying ending that you wanted from like all those times playing, guys, and that's what really sucks about that. So that's a big, you know, that's a whole thing. They had to tie up those loose ends. They had to finish the game, and they did, but they didn't do it well. The whole storyline is now inconsistent with the way it works, with the whole map pieces. All of the stuff that you did, guys, in Pirate101 was basically for nothing. I mean, Kane's dead, but like, did you really accomplish much? I mean, I don't know. Some would argue you would, but I think that's just, I think that sucks. I think it really does. So anyways, moving on here. Pirate101's storyline, here's another positive that I like personally, but I know this is a bit opinionated, I think. I know there's many people in the comments that are going to say, oh, Pirate101's storyline was a lot better than Wizard's, or Wizard's storyline was superior in every way to Pirates. I know I'm going to get a lot of those comments. That's okay. You guys can all have your own opinions. Yeah, these are some of my preferences. So Pirate101's storyline, I noticed at least, had taken on a much darker tone than Wizard's storyline. Now, this is something that I really liked. This is something I really enjoyed about the game. Obviously, this game is marketed towards kids, and I think Wizard101 still markets itself towards kids, and Pirate101 does that as well, obviously. I think the games suffer from that a bit, especially because of how much the audience has grown over the past, like, I don't even know, decade. It's crazy. But Pirate101's storyline has a much darker tone to it. Obviously, you've got, I think the game's storyline, it got dark around Valencia Part 1, I think. Like, I don't know. I think it was just really cool. I think it's really cool how the storyline worked and everything, and the little puppet shows and everything. It was definitely darker than Wizard101. Obviously, I think Haunted Skyway had a really dark storyline, and I think there's even, like, a place in Haunted Skyway that was, like, that had like a noose in it and everything. It was, I don't know, I just love Pirate101's storyline because of how dark it is, how dark and dreary it is. Obviously, in the final act, you've got Kane shooting his own father, like, yeah, just killing his own father straight up. I mean, that's intense stuff, and that's what I like from Pirate101. They've got a lot of those things sprinkled in, and it's obviously, I think it's very good that it's dark. I think it fits the audience a little bit, and I'm sure many will agree. I know a lot of people love a good, like, you know, dark storyline, and I know some people a little bit more lighthearted that would prefer Wizard101's fairy tale-like approach to things, which is what I'll talk about. Yeah, once we get to the Wizard101 pros and cons. But Pirate101, obviously a more darker tone. I think when everything's more dark, it adds a sort of realism that Pirate101 has, I think, that Wizard doesn't. So that's what I like about that. Obviously, life itself, I don't know. Life itself is very dark and dreary, and Pirate101 really encompasses that, I think. Yeah, with the whole Kane storyline, I think it's very nice. Yeah, I don't know if that whole sentence made a lot of sense, but hopefully you guys just know that I like the dark, depressing stuff in Pirate, and I'm sure many of you do as well. I don't know, it just makes the game a little bit more realistic. And Pirate101 is definitely more realistic, I guess, you know. I mean, how realistic can you get in these games? But I mean, it's definitely more realistic than Wizard101. And it definitely adds more purpose to what you're doing, so I really like that as well about the game. Next up here, I brought a little notepad too, because I had to write all this shit down because there's just so much. So here's the thing, right? So about Pirate101's small storyline and everything, it's very good. It's definitely very good in the way that they tell it. It's really good for telling individual stories. You know, like obviously you've got your companions with their own individual stories. You do the quests for them, and that's great and everything, right? But here's the problem with that. You've got this small world of Pirate 101, great world building, good individual character stories. However, in the grand scheme of things, these games are both trying to tell a very big, very big story, and I feel like sometimes, in a sense, Pirate 101's story can get a bit too big for its britches. Does that make sense? I've heard that phrase being thrown around sometimes. Basically, Pirate 101's worlds, I feel like it's just a little bit too small. The game's a little too small for the story that they're trying to tell, especially it being rushed towards the end. Obviously added to the distaste of the story that I had, because obviously it was trying to tell a big story, you know, like this whole chase around the spiral for Kane's map pieces, and it was getting really intense, right? But it only ended up being like, what, how many worlds are there in Pirate? Like 6 or 7? Maybe 8? There's no way there's 8 worlds, right guys? I don't know, I'm not about to look it up right now, but it's something like that. So, I don't know, I don't think Pirate's story was scaled to the game that it had, and I think Wizards did a much better job of having a story scaled to how big the game was. I think the story of Wiz fit the whole size of the game a little bit more, if that makes sense, because obviously Pirate 101 is a much smaller game, and yes, once again, Wizard 101 does have the advantage of being a more successful and just an older game. I don't know if that's always a good thing, but it did come out first, and it has more content because of that. So yeah, that's, I think, all I've got on Pirate. After all, yeah, overall, to sum it all up, Pirate 101, better, storyline's more grounded, it's better for storytelling, the companion dynamic, super cool, right? Wizard 101 feels a little bit more distant, I guess. Pirate 101 storyline, it was just a little rushed towards the end, you know, they had to tie up loose ends, they did it in just a horrible way, and the story's inconsistent, and basically everything was for nothing, which really sucks. On the positive side, Pirate 101, it's darker, I like that. That's more of a personal preference for me. It just adds sort of a realism that makes the game a lot more fun, in my opinion. And then overall, Pirate 101 storyline, just a little bit too big for the game. Obviously, after all, both these games are trying to tell a grand story. But I think Pirate 101 just needed a few more worlds under its belt, and I'm sure many of you could agree with that statement. So let's move on to the Wizard 101 stuff, guys. Let's talk about what Wizard 101 did well in its storyline. And of course, overall, at the end of the video, I'm going to give you my opinion of which game did the story better, did their own story better, you know, which game has a better story overall, yeah. Like I said, I'm just going to be talking about this whole, you know, not exactly the specific story, just what it did well in its own right. So, anyways, for the Wizard 101 storyline, this game is marketed towards kids, and I think in a sense, this is a very kiddie game, but then again, it's also not. I think there are definitely mature undertones in both these games. So the concept of magical worlds in Wizard 101, overall, I think the theme of this game is a little bit better than Pirate 101's theme, which obviously makes for a better story and a better game design and everything, and that might be why this game has succeeded over Pirate. I don't really know. But overall, this game has gotten more updates, so maybe that's why. But anyways, the whole concept of magical worlds and it just makes for a very fairy tale-like story, which, I mean, in most cases, you know, it's pretty good. Overall, though, it can make the game feel a bit fake at times. I mean, obviously, it's a fake game, right? But you've got to be somewhat invested, emotionally invested, whatever, in the game, you know? Overall, though, the story is very interesting, so yes, I really like the concept of wizards and magic. That's very cool to me. I really like that about the game. So I think that's really good for the game and all. It doesn't have, I mean, obviously, you know, the whole Wizard 101, the wizard theme drives the story a bit. And I think it just, overall, the story does have a better concept than Pirate's story. But anyways, moving on from that, Wizard 101's storyline, what it doesn't do that well is it's a bit vague at times. It doesn't exactly do the best job of explaining how things came to be. I guess Pirate suffers a bit from this as well. But I guess you could argue some of that vagueness makes for a more interesting game, which I can understand. Obviously, you gotta have some mystery. But Wizard101, it doesn't really explain a whole lot. It explains how the dragons, the titan, the dragons, the giants, and the tritons. Was that how it was? Were those the three people? Sorry, I don't know the lore top to bottom, but I'm pretty sure basically the titans sung the spiral into existence. Bartleby wove the threads. The raven helped at some point. You know, obviously they share all that, but overall, they don't do a great job of diving into the specifics of this game. It's very vague of how things came to be. I'm literally in the most vague place in the entire game, the Arcanum. We don't know where this came from. I mean, not really anyway. Like where are all these people from? I mean, we obviously know where some of them are from. But overall, it doesn't do a great job of explaining its origins, the people's origins, and how it came to be. There might be a little bit of lore on it in Mirage. I'm not really sure. But the Arcanum is just one of the most mysterious places in the Spiral. There's a lot that we don't know about this game. And overall, for storytelling, I feel like when you have too much mystery, it can get a little bit boring at times. I mean, like, that's just my opinion. Obviously, opinionated video. But I think it can get a bit boring at times. Yeah, once again, just my opinion. Overall, yeah, story's very vague. I mean, we don't know where this black hole comes from. We don't know the mysterious voodoo energies going into it. We don't know what these mysterious vortexes are. We don't know a lot. Obviously, there's also some energy that's like feeding into the tree that's going up into that room. We don't know what that is. That's not explained to us. I mean, we don't know all the individual teachers very well. I mean, not really anyway. We don't know why this was built. I mean, we don't know how it was built. It just said it was. I think it said it was built using some kind of arcane magic or something. I'm pretty sure they did that. Yeah, I don't really know. Anyways, yeah, we just don't know a whole lot, I think, and I think the story is very vague in how it is told. Yeah, we don't have much of a basis. We don't really know why Wizard City was created. We don't know why we were chosen. There's a whole lot we don't know, and Pirate101 does suffer a bit from this. I think both games could do a little bit better on telling some origin stories. I mean, I'm just saying. Both games suffer from it, but I think Wizard101 suffers a little bit more just because the game is so vast and there's so many areas, you know, and we just don't know a whole lot, and I think that makes it, I think a vague storyline, it's kind of interesting, but if you do it too much, it makes the game uninteresting. It kind of has a reverse effect. So that's just my opinion on that. But anyways, moving on from that, Wizard101, one of the things that it does have over Pirate, it has a lot more storyline to play through, basically making it feel a lot more complete and satisfying than Pirates, pretty much in every way. We get a pretty firm ending after every arc, you know, it's pretty nice. They tie it up pretty well and everything, even though sometimes it can be a bit silly, like Arc 3's end, I feel like it was a little bit weird. But overall, it was a pretty satisfying conclusion, and I think every conclusion to every world in Wizard101 is pretty satisfying, maybe besides Azteca, but that's besides the point. I think, yeah, Wizard101, there's a lot more content to play through. Obviously, it's a bigger game, and I mean, there's literally just more worlds to play through. It just makes the story, they can stretch it out over like a little bit longer, which obviously makes it a little bit more interesting. It keeps you invested over a few worlds, and it doesn't end it too quickly like Pirate101 did. That's one of the advantages it has over it. Yeah, overall just makes the game a little bit more satisfying, and it's definitely more complete. I mean, the timeline of Wizard101 is a lot better than the timeline of Pirate101. I will say that. So that's overall just my opinion on the length of the game. Wizard101's length is great for the story that they're telling. Obviously, Pirate101's story, they need more worlds, guys. They need more worlds to make it more complete. I know that's never going to happen, and Pirate101 will suffer from that because of that. So, moving on, Wizard101, one of the things it also does well, it's got much deeper lore in the roots of the Spiral. Basically, I think this makes the game a little bit more fun to play through. I feel like, you know, when you know... obviously, we don't know a whole lot about this game. There's much we don't know. But we do know that this game is rooted even deeper into the Spiral than Pirate101 is. Just with all the magic that was used to create the Spiral and everything. I think that was very interesting that they did that. And I think that overall, the whole scale of this lore is a lot bigger than Pirates. And of course, the game size reflects that. So I believe this makes people much more interested in the lore. I think they do that very well. Overall, I think there is a little bit too much mystery about certain things, but overall, it is done really well. How people get invested into this lore because of how big it is, and because of how deep it is rooted into the spiral. I think that's what makes people so interested about it, and the scale is very nice, as I mentioned previously, so that's very cool. Overall, the next point I wanted to bring up was Wizard101. Overall, it just has the advantage of coming out before Pirate, and that's something you got to take into account. Wizard101 has just a lot more to work with, in my opinion. Obviously, the game's bigger, right? I've talked about this. Obviously, there's just more story. It's just more satisfying. You know, Pirate101 was rushed out, and that's what sucks about that. I think Pirate101 had a lot of potential, guys, and I feel like they kind of ruined it a little bit. Another point that I wanted to bring up, this is more of a personal opinion. Wizard101, you know, after the second arc, after the whole Morganth arc, I feel like it didn't exactly know where it was going, and the story felt a little bit not as well fleshed out, I believe. One of the things that they did do well, overall, here, I just want to bring up that I like the third arc of Wiz more than the second arc, I will say that. I did bring that up if you guys watched my 3 arcs of Wizard101 ranked video. I do like the third one more. However, I think it suffers from a bit of fleshing out problem. I think that the second arc is a lot more fleshed out, especially because it was kind of rooted, at least the beginning of the second arc was kind of rooted in the first arc, because you learn about Morganth and how she was also raised in Wizard City like us, and was on track to become a wizard like us. I think that obviously makes it more fleshed out because she's the main villain of the story, and obviously allows for better storytelling. And in the third arc, I just feel like there wasn't a whole lot of potential there. You know, Old Cobb was kind of just this mysterious figure that was helping us out, like so many other figures. And it's like, oh, this one's bad. And we're like, oh, darn, you know? I feel like it just, yeah, at least at the start, it just wasn't as interesting, I guess. And there just wasn't a whole lot they could go off from because obviously Morganth's arc was really, really big. And they didn't really know where to go from there. And I think that's when the game became a little bit inconsistent with what it was doing. And overall, I think it led to a little bit of a bad track with not as interesting lore, which kind of sucks for the game. So, anyways, I also think Wizard101's lore, I guess its endings, you could say, its endings were a lot bigger and grander to each world than Pirate101. This also goes hand in hand with how big the game is. It makes the story feel more complete, and the game itself is just a lot more satisfying, I guess, when you really think about it. The whole end to Polaris is just an example, and even Azteca. Overall, I think these endings, there's obviously a bunch more grand endings, like Morganth falling through the glass. I could go on and on, guys. There were some pretty big endings to this game, to each world, you could say, and I think that's just scales really, really nicely with the size of the game. Overall, yes, if you have noticed, there's a pattern throughout this video. Pirate101 has a bit of a size problem. Don't quote me on that, but I just think the game, you know, obviously it doesn't scale as well. Wizard101 scales well. Obviously, the worlds, you know, they have better endings, which overall make the storyline a bit more interesting, in my opinion. So they do that well, obviously. It all just kind of connects to Wizard101 being a bigger game. But I will say that Pirate101's story, I think, had a lot of potential going forward after they released Aquila. Because, you know, obviously you got the map from Argos. You know, you were kind of on track, and I think they were thinking about releasing Polaris, maybe even Dragonspire, I'm not really sure, after Aquila. That would have been really interesting to see in Pirate. I think Polaris could have been a really, really good world in Pirate. So I think Pirate101's actually had more potential in Wizard101 during that time. But of course, you know, Valencia Part 2 came out, and it was ruined a little bit, which obviously kind of sucks for Pirate. But anyways, yeah, there was potential, right? And it just wasn't used, and that kind of sucks. So anyways, this leads to my overall consensus, guys. Pirate101, of the Pirate101 and Wizard101 lore. So my overall consensus, I think Pirate101's storyline, right? I think it had the potential to actually be better than Wizard101's. It had some pretty good stuff to work with. And obviously it had a more darker tone. You had a crew. You were a little bit more invested in the characters. And I think the story as a whole, just the world building, was obviously very good in the way that they told it, at least at the beginning. It was very, very nice. And obviously, I think Pirate101 being a small game has good and bad effects for it. Obviously, it has more, when you have a smaller game with fewer worlds, it allows for more world building between those worlds and a little bit more character building and some character development, right? That's obviously very good, and that's what Pirate101 does well as a small game, guys. But overall, Pirate101's storyline just did not scale to the size of the game, and that really hurt it, guys. That really hurt it. It just had so much potential, and they had so much potential to add so many more worlds, guys. And it was going to be great. They had so much potential. Oh, I keep saying that because it's true, guys. They had a lot. There was so much more they could do with Pirate101, and they didn't decide to do it. So, anyways, this leads to my overall opinion that Pirate101 did have more potential than Wiz. I think it had potential to be better, but it fails from a lack of care by KingsIsle. They really didn't want to give it a proper story. They didn't care to give it a proper story. I'm sure some people did, but those people might have gotten fired anyway because they got lazy. They decided to focus on Wizard. You hate to see it, but in my opinion, Wizard101 storyline wins, guys. I think, like, I'm gonna get some hate for this, I know. Pirate101, there's a lot they did well, right? I think the overall basic story is pretty good. But Wizard101, you just gotta take into account that it has so much more to work with, guys. There's so much more. Okay, for what it is, Pirate101, like, its storyline is really good for what it is. For the small game that it is. They did an incredible job with crafting it, I think. But Wizard101, it's a grander game, and it's going to have a bigger and grander storyline with more fleshing out. So, I don't know, guys. That's just my opinion. Really let me know in the comments your guys' opinions, because this is really interesting stuff. Yeah, just tell me what you guys think, I guess, about this video and about my opinions. But yeah, overall, Wizard101 wins it for me, just because they have more to work with. Pirate101, though, obviously has its pros and cons, and Wizard101 has its pros and cons. I went through all of them, in my opinion. I'm sure there's more stuff that I probably didn't go over, but that's just overall my opinion of me talking out of my ass. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Please let me know in the comments down below who you guys think has the better storyline, which game has the better storyline. I know a lot of people are going to say Pirate. I know a few are going to say Wizard. But in my opinion, Wizard101's just, it had more room to be fleshed out. And it is so, in my opinion. So, anyways, that's my opinion. Yeah, I don't know how much hate I'm going to get for this video. I don't know how many dislikes I'm going to get, but I hope you guys enjoyed my in-depth analysis of both storylines. Once again, not talking about the specific lore, but also kind of talking about the specific lore. So, yeah, I don't know. This video kind of contradicts itself, but it's fine. I hope you enjoyed regardless. This was one of my favorites to make, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. I think I've got strong opinions about this, and many people have strong opinions about this, because overall, I've invested a lot of time into both of these games. These games have kept me pretty invested over this decade. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about. And there's many things that they did wrong and right. So let me know your opinions on all of that in the comments down below. I'm going to finally wrap this video up, because it's too long, I know, and I didn't take any cuts, because I don't even know. I just wanted to keep talking about it, because this video was a lot of fun to make. Let me know if you guys want more videos like this in the future. You guys can subscribe if you enjoyed this video for more content like this in the future. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video in general, guys. And that's going to be all from me. Once again, let me know. This is a huge topic, so let me know your opinions in the comments down below, guys. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, guys, and have a good day.